We're back. Brokers, Babble. We are live. I'm Neil Isaacs. I'm here with Brian York. Brian, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Neil. How about yourself?
I'm happy we're doing this again, man. We made it a whole week. We survived our first Brokers Babble, where brokers babble on about all things business and who knows what else. It's going to be back again. I'm excited to have a special guest. How was your week business-wise? What happened since our last foray in your world?
So we got two more business deals under contract, listing agreements, signed engagement agreements, I should say. And so excited about getting those onboarded and getting those up and running. So it's been a very productive week. And we've done some buyer-seller meetings this week too. So some listings that we currently have on the market. We've had the owner meet our buyer, which, as you know, we do these buyer-owner meetings and kind of start the process of getting an offer in place.
It has buyer-owner meeting. That's a sneak peek to our upcoming video that I want to play momentarily. It has been a busy week. I'll tell you what. Let me do the introduction of us, and then we'll do our quick tip, and then we'll do our guest introduction, and then I'm excited that Rory McDermott will be joining us. So, as far as us, I told you, kind of got into it a little bit. I'm Neil Isaacs. I'm a business broker. Brian York, business broker on the VR team. We are business intermediaries. We do a little bit of real estate here and then, and this show is just all about what a day in the life. So, as you heard from Brian, it's been a busy week. Similar in my world, it seems like the days just kind of stack up one after another. I mean, it's I can't believe the year is half over. That's been the big thing, is we just moved into the second half of the year. And I don't know about you, it just doesn't seem to be slowing down. So
if anything, as we've seen, it's actually speeding up. And so that's a good thing. So, everyone has been a little uncertain about the market, but at least in our area in the triangle, things are just buzzing right along, and it doesn't seem like there's any stopping it. I keep looking at all the new, as I'm sure you do too, Neil. I get a lot of feeds of what's happening in our area, the Triangle Business Journal and some other publications. And man, there's just so much construction happening lately. A lot of commercial. I just saw there was in Cary a $13 million acquisition done at the Lowe's Foods Market. That just happened or was announced today. Man, things are still moving and shaking. So
the Triangle Business Journal has the crane watch. I love that. I mean, we're so lucky. We're here in Raleigh, North Carolina, to live in such a busy metro. There's just so much stuff happening all the time. Well, enough about us, Brian. I want to get to the quick tip. And the quick tip today, this content is for buyers, owners, brokers. This was more for the brokers, and this is something that I got another video to share. And it's funny because Rory was with me, and he's waiting in the wings. We're going to bring him on, but he was here moments after this video was shot. So I'm going to play the video, and then we'll talk about the quick tip. And I will play that now.
The buyer owner meeting. This is one of the tricks that we do with these hot businesses. We bring multiple buyers. So I'm excited to bring a couple buyers out to this business, downtown Raleigh, beautiful downtown Raleigh. It's not one of these have to sign an NDA to tell you which one it is. But we find this helps sometimes to elicit offers, kind of get the buyers to rub shoulders together. And we show them the place, get a chance to meet the owners. They've proven they have the money, and then ask them to make an offer. Day in the life of business broker.
All right. That was a short I did recently on the way to a buyer owner meeting where we did me and Rory call it the cattle call, which isn't the most respectful way to call it. But sometimes we invite multiple buyers to look at a business at the same time, which is always interesting to kind of, like I said, let them rub shoulders together. And they kind of see like, oh my God, there's other people involved in this deal. So it's kind of like an open house in real estate, except with a real live living, breathing business. So those are fun. And we only do those with certain businesses that are obviously already public places where anybody could go anyway. But I don't know, those are kind of fun.
Well, the thing you failed to mention, it was a huge success. You were able to get that listing under contract and sold in record time.
Yeah. We've done it a few times, and that one in particular, not the one that shot one before, but we've done this before, and yeah, you just kind of feel the buyers like a sense of urgency. That's part of our role, right? Is to create a sense of urgency, and they definitely feel it. I can definitely say it's led to some awkward situations as well, but I like that, and it's not appropriate for every opportunity, but sometimes it just works. Kind of depends what's going on with the deal. All right, well, that was fun. Let me get our introduction up here. So, special guest introduction. I'll ask you to join me a little bit for this, Brian, but Rory McDermott is our guest today. I'm excited to bring Rory on the show. He's also on our team. He's from over the pond. He likes to speak his mind. He doesn't hold back much. Brian, what other kind things do you have to say about Rory?
Well, actually, Rory's very knowledgeable. He's actually done a lot of restaurant and cafe transactions. And what I like about Rory, he brings a different perspective to us, right? From being from, as you said, over the pond. He brings a perspective that sometimes is very refreshing for us. So I think he brings a great deal of wealth of information, and also he is a business owner himself. And so with that, I think he's awesome, and I've learned a lot from Rory being on the team.
Awesome. Well, with that, let's bring on Rory McDermott. Rory, need some special festival. Welcome to Brokers Babble. Rory, how do you do, sir?
Very good, thank you. Yes, it's very nice listening to you guys, and I can see. I do remember that when we went into kind of railroad people a little bit to kind of make a decision. It was very good, I think, because we actually got a decision that day. Somebody said,
we did.
More or less, I'll take it, because
yeah.
I pushed them into a corner, and sometimes that really is very good, because otherwise they'll go home, think about it, and you don't hear another word for another week. And
it can backfire. It can backfire. It's not for everyone.
Well, I do remember that particular one. One guy thought he was the only one that was going to come to that meeting.
Yeah.
So he got a little bit miffed about it. But then all of a sudden he realized that, okay, I've got a good chance here. So when everybody else kind of moved and they asked their questions, he then decided to stay. And that's when he got to ask the owner all the questions. And it worked out really well for him. In fact, he actually ended up buying the place. So it worked out really well.
Well, let's talk about you, Rory. Give us a quick introduction to you and kind of how you entered our orbit, and anything you want to share with the millions and millions of people that are watching right now and in the future.
Well, okay. So I'm originally from Ireland. I mean, I sound English, because I was sort of educated in England. I went to college there and so on. And I had sold a few businesses in England. So I was kind of knowledgeable, knew how it all worked, I knew the legal system. And when I came over here, I opened up a business because I'm in the design and printing company. We do a lot of design, printing, do all sorts of things, really. And when COVID came along, it was kind of a time when I wanted to pivot. I was kind of thinking, should I stick with, design and print, which I have done. In fact, actually, it's become very busy now. But I realized I really wanted to do business broking because it's a very interesting business. And it's something I kind of felt very familiar with. So when I met Neil, who's a great guy, and so is Brian, they're fantastic guys to work with, I decided this is really what I'd like to do as well. I find it interesting. And it's not all fun. I mean, there are some problems where, that I could go into leases. That's one of my pet peeves at the moment.
Yeah, we're going there soon, for sure.
And but basically, when it's all transaction is complete and everybody's happy, and I actually went to a business seller meeting at the weekend. I had dinner with the owners, and it was a fantastic evening. But it shows you that things get done, and people are very happy with our results. And we work a lot on referrals because people like what we do, and we're very honest with them. So it's a very good way of getting on the business.
You mentioned that, like, why we do it. I agree. Like, sometimes it's obviously there's compensation for our efforts, but sometimes we meet people and they need our services. Like, they're in a bind in their life, and you guys know I just finished that one that took forever, and it's like, that guy, he gets to start the next chapter, and that's really rewarding in its own. So it is a rewarding. It depends what day. People ask me, do you like business brokerage? It's like, well, when I get paid, I like it, but leading up to that, it can be very, very stressful, right?
Yeah, there's so many things to put together on it. It's not as straightforward as selling like a realtor. That's kind of straightforward. This is, you have to know the business, you have to know the sort of the stresses they're going through, the reasons why they're selling the business.
Yeah.
There's a heck of a lot going on that you have to understand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology involved.
And I know we're
gonna say, Rory, we really are social workers, right? And Neil's
Yeah.
Neil's the psychiatrist, and we're the social workers. But for real, you can't be in this for the money. You have to be in it to help people reach their goals, and then we get paid. So
That's true. Yeah.
Psychiatrists prescribe drugs, right?
Yeah, it's true. You probably do need them occasionally.
I'm going to do that on my next buyer seller meeting. Like, okay, Mr. Buyer, you need to make an offer, and Mr. Seller, you need to take this Xanax over here.
Yeah.
I kid. Well, before I'm teasing the lease conversation because I know you're ready to go, Rory.
No.
But we typically do our deal of the week before the special guest comes on. But I wanted to do the deal of the week with you because this week's deal of the week is a high-end dealership / automotive service center. And I want to I'll put a link in the chat here so people can see it. But I wanted to bring this on because this is one of yours. Classic and sports car dealership and restoration shop. So I'll tell you what I like about it. I'll put it in the chats now. And then we got some comments going on. Thank you, Ross, for chiming in there. So I put a link if you want to look at this out in the internet, in the interwebs. But what I think is cool about this opportunity is if you are a gearhead or if you're looking just for a beautiful space to sell cars, this thing is already done. It's like built out. It's clean. I mean, I've never seen a garage so clean, and guys got all the permits ready to go. I just see this as a perfect opportunity for maybe a sales guy and a service guy. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios where this could fit in, but great location too. Really cool business, and the guy's making a lot of money. So that's why I like this opportunity. Rory, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this deal of the week.
Well, actually, it's a very good business. It's not a very complicated business because he really sources these cars from mainly from Europe. They're European cars. That is his name. But he's really offering it so that people can not necessarily just have European cars. They can sell American cars virtually from anywhere. But the nice thing about it, it literally is sort of, he actually has customers all over the country who say, find me an MGB, find me a Jensen Interceptor, whatever it is. And literally they will send him a request and he will source it, buy it, and then he actually has a Rolls Royce which he goes and picks up the client at the airport, picks them up, brings them to the warehouse and the workshop and everything else and the showroom, and he does the deal, and then he organizes the distribution of the vehicle to wherever it's going to be located. So it's very, very good actually how the business works.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. If maybe you know a gearhead out there that's been looking for a garage space is really hard to find. Now, the garage space isn't for sale. It's a transferable lease, and it's got a history of people coming here, and they know they can get fine automobiles sourced here. So share that opportunity with a friend. If you know somebody that might need to see that, share it on social. That's our opportunity of the week. Pretty cool to be able to meet business owners like this and to help them with their options. I believe it's kind of a retirement sale type opportunity. So, nothing wrong with the business, just somebody looking to make a move. So
one of the things I just want to chime in and say, Neil, is that Rory obviously is the best business broker to sell this business. I keep learning more and more about Rory and all his interests in life. And man, this guy's like an encyclopedia when it comes to cars. I was in shock when we had our meeting last week, Rory, and you knew what that automobile was. You knew what that automobile was. And these aren't new automobiles. These are like vintage automobiles. So the best business broker in the business to know how to sell this type of business.
It is. Well, of course, I know European cars very well. I mean, I've kind of brought up with them. My father dabbled with cars. That was really what it was. My father was in the Royal. It's actually a British version of the American. It's like the Royal Air Force. So he was working with cars and all different types of equipment, but he kind of dabbled with different types of British sports cars. He had an E-Type Jag. He just had everything, Austin Healey's, the whole lot. And so I kind of picked it up from him, and got to the knowledge of knowing what every car was and what they could do and how the usual sort of stuff. I was very, very interested in. And it's really not necessarily a hobby of mine, but I did enjoy working with my father and he used to pay me as well, so it was great. I used to go cards up.
With this, I'm getting to our special topic of the week. I've been teasing it, but I'll pivot from this opportunity into our topic of the week, which is landlords. So with this opportunity, I remember, we talked with this business owner and we said, what do you want to accomplish? And we had, we talked about the financials, but we went right to the lease and we said, what is the chances that someone else can step into this opportunity? And I remember with this situation, we addressed that up front, but this is a segue into our topic, which is, how do landlords affect getting deals done? In this particular situation, it was like easy breezy. Here's a path to assume the leasehold. Landlords involved. So, Rory, is it always that easy?
Unfortunately, it's not. You're right. This one was quite easy, really, because he's actually friends with the landlord, so that makes it, an easy transition for anybody. But we've been working with, landlords, and they're, besides being very difficult to get hold of, they delay things. There never seems to be a priority, even though we're trying to get a deal through. There's always trying to get an answer from them. And we've got one at the moment where literally the landlord just hasn't got back to it. 2 or 3 weeks gone by. The buyer is chomping at the bit because he wants to move in. He needs to sort of show this is a franchise company, so obviously needs to show the franchise company the actual building, and we can't get an answer off the leasing company. So it really can hinder, the sales sometimes.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of places we could go there. I see this, Brian, you see this too, where people are like, great news, I'm ready to retire, and I let my lease run down, so I have no obligations. And they're like really happy about that. I'm not happy when I hear that. Brian, how do you feel when you run into people that just let their lease go?
Well, it makes me very nervous now because, as you know firsthand, that's what kills deals.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have any negotiating power, and the future buyer/tenant has no idea how to plan for their future business because they don't know what the obligation is going to be for the future rent.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm a business buyer, I know that my rent is probably the one largest cost outside of my payroll. And I want to know what that cost is into infinity. And I want it to be flat. I don't want to think, well, maybe in a month it could double or triple, or maybe I get kicked out. That's risk for me. So, but Rory, let's talk contrast. Like you mentioned 2 cases there. We talked about our deal of the week. He knew the landlord. And then you talked about one where we can't even find the landlord. What's your experience with like different types of landlords and how they affect deals?
Well, the landlord, if they're responsive and they actually do work with you, it's a breeze. We've had them where the landlord's been so responsive from day one. We literally phone them up and they get back to us, and we're just moving on swiftly with it. But when they don't respond, and it also depends on the relationship that the actual owner of the business at the moment has with the landlord, because sometimes that can be a little bit iffy. Whether they're getting on well together, or whether it's just purely sort of like they're trying to get out of the lease and they're probably happy for them to go. There's a lot of scenarios going on there, but I do think generally a landlord does tend to be a little bit difficult sometimes to get hold of. But I'm going back to what Brian was saying before. It was one where I was talking to someone the other day, and they were actually they want to sell the business, but they didn't want to sign a new lease. Now, of course, that was a real danger sign, because the business is pretty worthless without a good lease. Yeah. And that's where I had to kind of talk them around. I'm still waiting for an answer from them, but I always worry when people sort of don't want to commit themselves, because they could have done a short-term lease. Yeah. It would have probably worked out great.
Yeah, I think that's not a business I'm interested in representing, as a business with no lease, because I'm thinking, am I just advertising a property for a landlord for the buyer to just go and write a lease with the landlord? Like, am I even servicing my client properly if I'm just introducing business buyers to a place that doesn't have a leasehold secured? I mean, that's really not in anyone's best interest. Maybe in the landlord, because he's saving on a commission for sourcing a new tenant. I just think it's a dangerous thing, and that's a lot of conversations we have early on with owners is, have you protected the space? Do you know what your obligations are to the space? We're on this topic of landlords. Rory, you ever run into PG issues?
Oh, absolutely. That's what frightens a lot of people, not having the personal guarantee on a lease. This is what this was all about, really. He didn't want to carry this through. He thought that somewhere along the line, somebody told him basically that even if he signed over his lease to somebody else, that he was still going to have a personal guarantee on. And with a clever attorney, I think you can get out of, not necessarily get out of it, but you can transfer that over to the new buyer. But he was so scared about it, he just wouldn't move forward.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. People either don't know what their PG's personal guarantee, they don't know what their obligations are, or they're over concerned about their personal guarantee options or obligations, I should say. And it's their expectations of us, the business intermediaries, to get them out of their personal guarantee, when in reality, when we met them here and they signed that PG like years ago before we even knew them. And I understand that, like, you want to sell your business, you want to get out of all the obligations. And it's kind of a dark side of commercial leases that this thing called a personal guarantee exists. But this is a reality of securing a space, is that landlords want to make sure that they can get paid whether you close your business or not.
Yeah. Well, it's mainly because they know the financials of the people they're dealing with at the moment, so they prefer to hang on to those if they can, as long as possible.
Yeah.
So Neil and Rory, can I interject and ask Rory a question? So Rory, because I'm newer than you in business brokerage, and so some of the things that I have encountered with dealing with landlords is, let me ask your advice on this, and maybe you can put this out there. So when you're working with your clients, so we're working with our clients, which is who we represent, the seller. When the buyer comes through and they're becoming the new tenant, how involved or not involved do we get when we're trying to work with the landlord with that new tenant coming in place? Like, what I'm trying to ask you is where I struggle right now with my deals is I'm not sure when I should step in or when I should let them negotiate directly, meaning the new tenant and the landlord, not our seller, but the new tenant. And so I find sometimes the ball may get dropped. So I feel like I need to chime in to make sure the deal keeps moving forward. But I'm still a little waffly on when and how I should proceed. So your help on that would prove beneficial for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is hand-holding. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Some people are very, very nervous about taking on a commitment as big as that. And you've really got to sort of like work with them as long as possible. There's going to become a time when they're going to have to fill out the application forms, do all that sort of stuff, all the financials and everything else. And that's kind of almost when you sort of let them go, because they're working directly with them. But in the early stages, you've got to work with them because they don't even know what they're doing. They just know they're getting fired a million questions from the landlord. So we have to stick with them. Okay. And I think that's been proven on a few cases where they've actually literally got so nervous they didn't know what to do. The guy that called Neil or myself to find out, what's my next move? Am I waiting for them or are they waiting for me? And it usually turns out that they haven't submitted. I mean, I'm a great believer in give them more than they want. Yeah. And as opposed to just submit what they've asked. If you want to do a sort of like let's just see sort of like an executive sort of like, business plan for the next 3 or 4 years, give them 5 years. Give them just a little bit more so that you're a very good story. They can look at you and go, these people are serious. Let's work with them. And that's when you can kind of almost let them loose. And then you can back off then. Okay. You don't need to hold the hand anymore.
It's a good question, Brian, because I always kind of follow the buyer's lead as well. Like, are you nervous to talk to the landlord? I'll ask the current tenant, what's your relationship like with the landlord? If they say, oh, those guys are schmucks, then I'm like, oh, maybe I should handle this. But if they say we're good friends and, I think he knows I want to retire, then I'll say, well, maybe you should make the first call and let him know that we sourced a great tenant. But it's different for every situation. And but Rory has a good point too. Like sometimes we have to be the chief handholder, the chief nudger, and either help. We'll offer to take the business buyer to the meeting with the landlord if the landlord is okay with us being there. A lot of landlords don't want brokers involved, so I always ask the landlord, would you like us to join or not? It's just whatever works for those two, because we have to remember we're just kind of joining up the buyer and the owner and the landlord and the tenant, and then our work is done. The buyer's going to have a new business and a new relationship with the landlord long after we're gone. So we're just trying to facilitate that and make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. And it's definitely different for everyone. Where I was going with that question earlier, Rory, ties into this. If it's a local landlord, like our deal of the week, it's a lot easier than if it's some REIT from New York City and we're in the queue and, they would just another name and face, not even a face, just another ticket on their docket system.
Yeah.
Then it gets really, really hard.
Yeah, it's true, really, because the bigger if you're talking about a landlord that handles 1,000 properties,
Yeah.
they almost don't know who you are, what property you're even talking about.
Yeah.
But if it's a local company, it's really much easier. You can talk away to them, and you can put them together very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think what I hear from most buyers is they just want the same deal that the current tenant has, and they want to secure it for several years in the future. So they're looking for an assignment of the current lease and an extension. Most of our owners, what do you think, Brian? Like 3-4 years, maybe 1 or 2 years in the future. And the buyer's like, I need more time than that. I'm going to give all this money. I need more time than that. So they're just like, let me have the same deal. And we usually manage expectations. Like the current tenant pays 2 or 3% more each year. Would you be acceptable if we could get you those terms, or if the landlord would give you those terms? Would that work for you? They just want what's fair.
So, plus, if they're going to do any alterations or invest a lot of equipment or whatever into it, they're looking at a much longer lease, because it's a long time investment. Maybe 10 years or more for like an SBA loan or something like that.
Yeah, I think a savvy buyer is going to say, I'm going to invest, $300,000 into this business. I'm going to make about $150,000 a year. So 24 months later, I just broke even. Like I need more. I'm not just trying to break even here. It's the last 5-7 years that I'm actually going to really make some money if everything stays still. So that's why savvy buyers look for a long-term lease, so they don't get.
And Rory and Neil, I think it's important to also point out, because you both have taught me this, is with SBA financing, they want, is it 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah. So that's a goal that we're thinking about. The best businesses are SBA financeable. So we're thinking about that 10-year mark. How do we get to 10 years? And there's a few ways to do that. Well,
but there is one thing, actually. I know with a lease, there was one we had recently, and it was something about the 10-year term with a cutoff point. So he was doing a lease that was like just a few months short of it.
Yeah.
Which was pretty interesting, wasn't it?
And the other thing we learned is that the rules aren't always the same, right? There was, it's got to be 10 years, got to be 10 years. Well, with 9 years and some odd months work, that'll work.
Or something like that. I think it worked out.
Yeah.
The deal was done.
All the rules are made to be broken. It's just like, just because they say they need that doesn't necessarily mean they have to. That's how business works.
Yeah. They want a long-term commitment, basically.
Yeah. And I know we're coming up on the 30-minute mark, so put your questions in the comments if you have any for Rory. I just did some content about lien subordination, so I would be remiss if I didn't just understand what lien subordinations are. We mentioned SBA deals. They're always a factor with lien subordination. And quickly what it is like, it's kind of betting on if it fails, who gets to pick apart what's left. So the bank and the landlord and the franchisor, they're all going to want to say, well, we get to go in there. If they don't pay their rent or they don't pay their royalties or they don't pay something, we get in first to pick apart what's left. That's what a lien subordination is in its most simplistic terms. So that's something where an intermediary can kind of help you along with your attorney teams to get through that stuff, because that really hangs up deals, and especially with SBA. So just know what a lien subordination is. Watch some of our content if you haven't seen that. Well, we're circling. We've babbled on now for 30 minutes. I'm going to start to wrap things up and talk about what's coming up next. Rory, any other comments you want to make about leases and what you've learned in doing lots of deals, or the importance of the lease, or dealing with landlords?
Well, my impression is, from what I've seen so far, is try and deal with the lease as early as possible. Almost one of the first things you do, start talking to the leasing company, because you know it's going to take 5, 6, possibly even a couple of months sometime. But that is the thing that's going to hold things up, especially if somebody wants to, complete within 4 or 5 weeks. That's really what you need to get going.
That's true. When we're picking a closing date, we're typically saying, how quickly can we get this lease signed if there's not a bank loan? Because it always takes longer than you think. And I would add my comment, which is funny, is keep paying your rent. Even if you're in the middle of a deal, don't assume you stop paying rent, because we see owners do that, where they're just like, oh, it's under contract, I don't have to worry about the rent anymore. Yes, you do have to keep paying the rent. We see that a lot. Okay. And Brian, any other comments? Have you ever had a deal fall apart because of a lease or a landlord?
Well, as you know, and so Rory knows as well, people think that they're very close to their landlord until the subject matter comes up.
Yes.
So part of our job is, again, we sell business confidentially. So we're not speaking to the landlord until we have a very viable prospect ready to, move forward with the purchase. And so, no matter how much of a relationship you may think you have with that landlord, and you think that having an option to renew or things like that might not be important because he's your friend who you play golf with, doesn't necessarily mean that that's all going to transpire when push comes to shove. So always have everything in writing, and try to have your lease extensions done up front if you're thinking of selling in the future. And so, we have. I'm learning as I go here, and I really appreciate having the senior people on my team. They listen to me go through my trials and tribulations, but the things I'm learning, like Rory had said, is as soon as I'm meeting with a prospect or someone who's interested in exiting their business, is let's look at that lease, let's talk to that. If we're not involved, at least start having conversations with that landlord and yourself, and see what your options are extending. PG may be nerve-wracking, but your business becomes very a lot less desirable or even sellable if you don't have these things in place.
Yeah.
Good topics. Well, and now it's the section where I'm going to do some plugs and talk about what's coming up next week. So let me go ahead and give you a plug, Rory. I'm going to put a little profile for you here in the comments. So there's a place to find out more about Rory. And Rory is actually also an incredible graphic designer. So he does a lot of the design work for our firm as well. So that's another resource that Rory has. You can learn more about Rory there on his LinkedIn page. Rory, you can plug anything you want. Anything else you want to plug?
No, I think you're doing a great job, actually.
Okay.
Like I say,
on our team.
That's a good thing, actually, because having some business savvy, experiences I've had with, design and print and things like that, I've seen businesses crumble, fold, whatever it is, quite often. I've seen businesses even sort of like rise from nowhere. Suddenly just total turnaround in the business. So it's quite interesting to see companies that, people that kind of get desperate to sell, and some that say, wow, things are going great for me. So it's been very, very interesting.
Yeah, and we appreciate the work that you do. And I think you do great work. You're helping owners with their options for exit, and it's a valuable service. And thank you for sharing a little bit about leases and landlords today. So speaking of people on our team, we're excited that Kelly Gunterman will be on next week. And we're going to talk to Kelly about what I'm calling the 7-year itch entrepreneur. And that's because every 5 to 7 years, he's buying or selling something. And so I think that's an interesting mindset. And, quick story is when my wife and I bought our first marital home, when I moved out of my bachelor pad, I remember the real estate broker said, "I know you think you're going to live here forever, but trust me, you're going to move in 5 to 7 years." And sure enough, 6 years later on the dot, we moved. And I think it's similar with business ownership. A lot of the business buyers we have, they're like, this is the next thing for me. I'm going to retire doing it. And then a few years later, they're like, I'm bored. Let's do something else. So I'm excited to talk to Rory about that. Tune in right here. It'll be at 3:30. And that's all I got. Any final comments before I close this up?
No, actually, it's been very, very enjoyable. Thanks, Neil. You do a great job.
Awesome. Well, in that case, I want to thank you, Rory. I want to thank you, Brian. Until next time, Babylon, and we will see you next Monday at 3:30. Everybody have a great day.
Okay. Goodbye now.
Thanks, Rory.
Okay. Cheers now.
Cheers.